Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, Chief Content Producer and Writer of jakestake.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. Now, if you're listening to this on our audio platforms, give us a 5-star rating, and please download this episode and more episodes as we continue to celebrate the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar's 5th anniversary season. I'm very happy to welcome these guys today, my next guest today. This duo is a combination of think of them as the Carpenters meets Slayer. As of this recording, they have 660 YouTube subscribers, 71,000 Instagram followers, and 76.6 thousand TikTok followers. They are Elizabeth LeBaron and Jake Zavracky, aka the Dream Eaters.
What's up?
It's actually Jake, but it's Jake Zavracky. That's my last name. It's a very hard last name to parse.
But I feel like all three of us have last names that are kind of hard to pronounce. Jacob, I don't know how to say say yours again.
Elyachar.
Elyachar. Mine's LeBaron, like the shitty Chrysler car.
Yeah.
And Jake Zavracky. What's going on?
Thank you guys for taking time on your schedule to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting us. We love podcasts.
Thank you. And alrighty, guys, before we get into the group's origin story, I want to talk to you about your individual stories. So could you describe how both of you got into music, and how did that passion evolve and desire to pursue a career in recording industry?
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Sure. Yeah, I can start. I've always been a singer. I feel like every singer says that. Like I was singing before I was talking. I came out like this, all the usual cliche things. But truly, I have always been singing. I grew up in a pretty religious household, which is quite funny given our content, if you're familiar. And I was always in choirs. So I really got started with music in church choirs. And from there, in my teens, I was like, screw that, respectfully. And you kind of only get two choices. It's like classical or jazz if you want to study music in college, unless you're going somewhere with like a rock program or, composition or whatever. But generally speaking, it's jazz or classical. So I went jazz and I hated that, respectfully. And then basically from there, I switched majors, finished college, never really stopped singing. But it wasn't until I moved to New York City and, started answering Craigslist ads for backup singers, stuff like that. And then Jake and I met working at a bar in our neighborhood, and we've been together as a duo musically ever since.
Awesome. I'm a fellow choir kid from 5th grade to 12th grade.
Incredible. Tenor or bass?
Bass, baritone.
Hell yeah.
All righty, Jake, you're up.
What Elizabeth just talked for so long, I don't even remember what was the question? How you started music?
The origin story, your origin story in music, and how did it become passion, evolve desire to begin a career in the recording industry?
Okay, so I started recording when I first more than anything else. So I would make music using a boombox that had a dual cassette deck in it, and I would go back and forth between the cassette decks and record like the guitar on one thing and then play that and record the vocal on the other side, and then keep going back and forth until all you could hear was hiss, basically. Which you guys are a little bit young to even understand why that joke was funny, but trust me, it was hilarious. I recorded and played guitar. I started when I was about 11 or so. I was mostly self-taught, but I did take lessons at the local music store. And then I just kept doing it, even though I wasn't very good at it, and kept going until I was at the age that I am now. And everyone keeps telling me to stop, but I keep going anyway.
We all have to follow our passions in life, no matter what people tell us to stop. I'm like,
yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No one's telling me to stop. I'm just joking. They should be, though. They should be. If they're good friends, they would be saying, why are you doing this? Just cut it out.
Oh, yeah. All righty. So I would love to hear more of the Dream Eaters origin story.
Okay. Well, we met at a bar that we both worked at. This is in the Gowanus neighborhood of Brooklyn. If you watch our content a lot, you will hear the word Gowanus come up often, and that's if you know anything about. Where are you from, Jacob?
I am originally from Overland Park, Kansas City.
From Kansas City. Okay. Well, anyway, in Brooklyn, there's this really, really shitty, rundown neighborhood that is next to one of the most polluted waterways in the world. That's our neighborhood, Gowanus, or that's where we met anyway. At this bar that we called Lowlands that we used to work at the same time, and we just started talking about doing music together. And Elizabeth came over to my apartment, and I had a bunch of songs ready for her to sing, and it took a while for the whole thing to evolve, but eventually we started making a lot of recordings. We made, I think, something like 4 or 5 EPs before we made our first album, and then we made a couple albums, and that's sort of the origin. If I went any further than that, we wouldn't be in the origin anymore. But that's how we met.
Absolutely, sounds a great story.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, so
people very rarely say that to me. Great story.
For the record, I think Gowanus is now like the fastest growing and most quickly developing neighborhood in Brooklyn, and that polluted waterway is a super fun site, and it looks a lot different than when we started making music around here about a decade ago.
No, it doesn't.
Yes,
It looks exactly.
No,
It's such a shithole.
Are you insane? It's a shithole, but it's an expensive shithole now. Like,
yeah, New York. That's because New Yorkers are insane. New Yorkers, right. Jacob, are insane. They will live in they will live in the most rundown shithole and pay way too much money for it, and then everything.
Yeah. Oh, tell me, guys. You can tell me about because I was in New York I lived there from June 7th, 2017 to May 2021.
Oh, okay. So you've been. What neighborhood did you live in?
I lived in Murray Hill, East 39th and 2nd.
Murray Hill in Manhattan. Okay, interesting. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting neighborhood. It's a lot nicer than Gowanus.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All righty. So, who are the musicians that influence the Dream Eater sound?
Well, I think the Dream Eaters at this point, we've had a lot of different we've had a lot of evolution over the years. So what we started at is quite different than where we've ended up. But I think we've kind of evolved into more of like a sort of a synth pop band with some guitar in it, and I think there's kind of a gothy element to it on the pop side of goth, not like super heavy goth, but like things like Susie Sue or like Peter Gabriel. And I know no one thinks of him as a goth, but that sort of kind of weirdo, slightly gothy sound, and then also the synth poppy like Erasure, Depeche Mode, things like that. I think that those would be. I don't even know that those are the influences per se, but those are that is the best yardstick for people to look at. I think is if you want to get an idea of what we sound like. I think that's when I'm mixing us now. Those are the people that I'm thinking of. So those are not. I wouldn't call those my original influences, but they have been what I think about when I'm writing and mixing the Dream Eaters for the last few years. A lot of people say we sound like Ghost. I don't hear that at all. Yeah. But so if you're trying to get an idea of what we sound like, a lot of people say Ghost. I don't know anything about Ghost really, other than I have heard them enough to say that I think that is wrong.
I don't even think
we hear it repeatedly. So I don't know.
I don't think it's so much that people think we sound like them as it is like kind of the subject matter. I mean, we have a song called Satan is Lord that's like really dancey, So I think it's just like, oh wow, we haven't seen very many artists make pop songs about Satan.
Yeah. I mean, Ghost isn't really a pop band, are they? They're kind of almost metal.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of Ghost, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Let us know.
Well, they're obviously extremely famous with a certain section of people because it is amazing how often people can, tell us that we sound like Ghost, who I knew of, but I didn't know anything about them prior to, I guess, a couple years ago when we were just getting so many comments that we sounded like them. And I think Elizabeth is right that it's probably more about the lyrical subject matter than it is about actually sounding like them. But I don't know. I guess if you're looking for another yardstick, that Ghost might be one also. But I don't think about them. You asked about influences. The answer with influences is like Peter Gabriel, Susie and the Banshees, Patti Smith to some extent, Cocteau Twins, Depeche Mode, that sort of thing gets you there.
Awesome. Elizabeth, do you haven't is that it? Or we're missing somebody?
I mean, well, so Jake writes everything. And like I'll come in and kind of curate, or I think because he has such a huge creative output, sometimes he just needs another set of eyes to be like, this is really catchy, this is something, let's run with this. But as far as writing, I mean, yeah, it's all Jake. And then kind of he'll direct me as far as vocal performance, like, hey, I want you to sing this in your Britney Spears voice, which has never happened, but I'm waiting for, or your
She's very good at it.
And I think Jacob, as a former choir kid, you get it. It's like my skill is blending and sort of morphing my voice to fit in. I'm a little bit of like a vocal chameleon to some extent. Like I feel like I very much have my own voice, but when it comes to kind of the output in Dream Eaters, they'll just be sort of different directions that we're going for. We've got like some kind of operatic stuff happening in the background here and there. So it's very fun for me as a vocalist.
Yeah, I mean, I think to bring that back to the question, which was, what are your influences? Like, our influences are often like, I'll just get an idea of what the vocal approach should be, and we'll talk about it, and I'll say like, well, you want to sound, like, and we're never actually going to end up sounding like this, but I'll say like, oh, this, you should sound like Bjork in this one or something, and like she'll just conjure this idea from that makes it's never going to sound anything like Bjork, but it's just Elizabeth's interpretation of what Bjork is when she's doing it,
Absolutely. We're not here about to talk about all these guys. We're here to talk about you. So let's talk about some of the stories behind some of the songs. So we got to start with Otanya, because that was the song that put you on my radar.
Okay. Well, Otanya is this is the thing that always makes it difficult for me to talk about what a song is specifically about, because usually it's about a lot of different things and it's about a lot of different people. So it's like an amalgamation of a lot of different people, and it's Otanya is sort of just about being disappointed by somebody, and in my case it's many people. It's not just one person, and it's about having a relationship that doesn't go well, and that one person wants more. One person wants to continue it, and the other one doesn't, which happens in a lot of relationships. Like one person, it always seems like in most relationships, one person is much more into it than the other person is, unless it's a relationship that works and has been working for a long time, which is sometimes the case also, obviously. So that's kind of what Otanya is about. I think that answers the question.
Awesome. So let's talk about another song, Mood Pills.
Well, Mood Pills is sort of about, if you are you asking me what it's about, or do you want me to talk about something other than what? Are you asking what the lyrics are about?
Oh, the story behind the song.
The story behind the song. Okay. Well, the stories behind the songs are always going to be roughly similar with us. Like I tend to I almost stream of consciousness, like kind of spit out the lyrics that kind of match musically with the mood of the song. And especially that particular song, that line, Mood Pills, you never want to fuck anymore. Like it just kind of, obviously mood, like, pills that you take for anxiety and things like that sometimes will kill your sex drive. So it's a comment about that. And it's kind of just about being sad and everything that comes with being sad. And all of that is summed up by the line "mood pills, you never want to fuck anymore." Like I think that line immediately tells you where we are and what we're talking about. As soon as you hear it, you know what the song is going to be about. You're already in that place. That's what I try to do usually with lyrics is if you take them literally, they might not make a ton of sense sometimes, but they should put you in the place that will help you understand them. You'll understand it because you'll just be in the right frame of mind. So yeah, so that's mood pills.
Awesome. I gotta say, I've never seen two song titles so really interesting, like Subhuman and Fuck My Skull. I never thought I would be saying F Fuck My Skull on a podcast.
Yeah, well, now you are. You just said it twice, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the lyrical content and the places where the songs come from it's a place of humor. So a lot of times when I think of something like "Fuck My Skull," I don't even exactly remember how that came up. I think I already had the sort of the first half of that. That comes from the very first line of the song, "Murder Me and Fuck My Skull." So I already had the idea. It was "Murder Me and Do Something Else." I think when I just kind of was playing the guitar, like "Murder Me" and blah blah blah, because it's just the way sometimes you just, when you're having a bad day, that's the kind of thing you mutter to yourself. A lot of the lyrics come from that type of idea where it's like, I'm having a terrible day, I have to, I'm muttering, and I'm muttering to myself like, oh my God, murder me now, that kind of thing. So that's where "Fuck My Skull" came from. Subhuman, I think I just thought of that title before anything else and kind of just wrote lyrics that made the title make sense, which I think a lot of songwriters do. I see a lot of song titles where I go, I'm pretty sure the first thing they did was come up with that title, and then they wrote a whole song around, because they wanted to call a song Subhuman. So I wanted to call a song Subhuman, and I just wrote a whole song around making that make sense as a title.
Yeah, it's a very interesting title. So, guys, who are your dream collaborators? The singers, the songwriters, the producers, musicians, and how would they enhance the Dream Eater sound?
I do just want to pause on "Fuck My Skull" really quick.
Okay.
Just because
I want to pause on "Fuck My Skull" as that would be a great follow-up single.
Just because I think like if you haven't met us or haven't listened to our stuff or kind of immersed yourselves in kind of our universe, it can sound like we're really making fun of something like really not funny. And I think like I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and it comes up a lot where it's like people are really uncomfortable, especially when you mix comedy and true crime, because it's just like, how dare you, kind of make light of like XYZ. And I know that we weren't like on about this, but I think it's just funny because it's like, our approach is kind of like making sense of things that are just like so horrible, and that it's just like, it's absurd to a degree. So "Fuck My Skull" is kind of like, it's really jarring, and there's a lot of, really like visceral imagery and stuff like that. But it's ultimately kind of like making sense of the human experience and just like, I don't know, to kind of just dancing to the absurd. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's very good. I like that. I like that description.
Awesome. And I gotta say, it's a very addicting song.
Thank you.
We're currently figuring out how to do it acoustically, so stay tuned for that.
Awesome. So let's go back to one of my questions. My last question was basically, you're the collaborators, so like the singers, the songwriters.
Yeah. I have to say, no one is leaping to mind, because I am so used to doing everything on my own at this point and I'm not really the world's best collaborator. I mean, of course, I've collaborated with people, and Elizabeth and I collaborate, and we also have another person, Steve, that's in the videos that has a big voice in what happens creatively. And but he doesn't really, not so much in the music, it's more in the video side of things. But I don't it would be very hard for me to think about people that I specifically want to collaborate, because most of them are either quite old or dead. All of the people that I named earlier, I would love to collaborate with. Kate Bush. I don't know if I even said Kate Bush. Kate Bush would be way up there. Peter Gabriel would be way up there. I mean, Bowie's dead. Stevie Wonder. I mean, none of these people. It's kind of a weird thing to think about too, because I understand you're saying dream collaborators, but for me to think of somebody in the term like somebody that is just so far flung, I just don't even think in those terms. I don't think of like, oh, this person's my dream collaborator, because I just think, well, is that going to happen? No. So I'm not even going to give any more brain space to that at all. But maybe Elizabeth has some ideas.
Yeah, right, Elizabeth. Who are your people?
Geez, I think like I take a much more abstract approach to that question, which is like, I don't know exactly what I would do with this person, but like the type of artist I would love to be around is like Sophie Tucker would be top of the list. They're a duo. They're much more, like EDM, dancey, but they still at their core are like incredibly talented musicians. And they just put on such a fun live show that I just think it would be so fun to like, especially because they're like really attractive and like, they're like both 6 feet tall. They look like impossible models. And then there's like Jake and I, also a duo that are like, a little bit more of a, I don't know, freaks. But like their whole audience is like the freak fam. I love the culture that they've built with their audience. And I love just like the energy that everything they do surrounds everything they do. So like dream collaborator right now would be Sophie Tucker. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it would be like a live performance or if it would be a recording or what, but I just love everything that they're doing. Trying to think of anybody else in video kind of thing. I mean, we just collaborated with a great artist, Tyler Spangler, on some artwork, which I think like I had already been following for a long time. So that was honestly a little bit of a dream collab for me. And stuff like that. Yeah, I don't really think of it so much as like, oh, I'd like there's this producer I'd love to get on this track. I just think like, who are artists that I think would be like awesome to be stuck in an elevator with?
To hang out with.
Yeah,
that's probably the best way to think about the answer, is like, who do you really want to hang out with? Because then, if you just were hanging out with somebody and listening to music together or something, so you'd probably just end up coming up with something.
Exactly. Yeah.
We should do this. We should do that. I could definitely see that happening. Yeah. Sophie Tucker, we should try to become friends with them.
Yeah, 100%.
If anybody out there knows Sophie Tucker, hook them up with us. We want to be best friends.
Thank you.
Okay, Sophie Tucker, you heard this here first. We're going to put this out into the universe. Alrighty, guys. I would love to talk about you and your team strategy, because it's 71 with social media, 71,000 Instagram followers and 76,000 TikTok followers is no laughing matter. So what have been some of the strategies that you guys have used to promote your music?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, because I was just thinking about this the other day. We did used to strategize more. And as we've evolved, we've realized, or at least I've realized, we don't really necessarily talk about like specifically about strategy, but I've realized that it kind of doesn't, the algorithms change so frequently that you're chasing your tail if you're trying to follow the algorithms. So from my point of view, you should just do whatever you want to do. It happens that what we wanted, we never planned, I certainly did not ever plan on making music that was tailored to social media so well. It just was a coincidence that that's the way that it ended up happening. I just happened to want to write a bunch of very short, funny songs. And it happened to work out very well with social media. I wasn't thinking about social media at all. So I was just doing whatever I wanted to do. So my advice, I don't know, I don't know if you're asking for advice for people, but my advice for people is just do whatever you want to do and don't worry about the strategy as much. Of course, sometimes if you can, you'd want to put the thing forward that's more likely to do well, and maybe put the other thing on the back burner if it's less likely to do well on social media. Save that for later, or find out a way to break it up to make it more digestible or whatever. yeah, I mean, do little things like that, but don't specifically tailor the entire body of your work to work on social media. I would just do the things that you want to do. And as long as you do that, you will be contagious to people.
Mm.
Awesome. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think exactly what Jake said. Like he kind of just had this idea to start doing videos and short form stuff. And I remember him kind of telling me this plan and me being like, Jake, like that's TikTok, like Jake was kind of anti TikTok at first. And I was like, we're making short, catchy videos. Like it just so happens that's what you want to do. And I'm here to tell you that's what's happening over here.
Yeah.
So that kind of did happen naturally, but it took a long time, like Jake said. Like there was no formula that finally took off. It was just like we just kept doing it, and eventually something caught on. But no, I think
sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, but I should also mention that the things that caught on were the last things that I was expecting to work.
right.
Like the very first video that sort of went semi-viral, I never would have guessed that would be the thing. Which is that's another sort of, hopefully I don't sound condescending, but it's another teachable moment, because it's like, it just goes to show you, like, you don't really know. You don't necessarily know what's going to take off. It's probably going to be the last thing that you expect.
Yeah.
Sorry, please continue. I forgot.
No, I was just going to say that whole kind of just do what you want to do. So I'm doing the artist's way right now, which is maybe like the most basic 34-year-old white woman thing I could possibly say on a podcast. But one of the things, or like one of kind of the promises in the artist's way, and you have to submit to some kind of creator, whether or not it's God or, it's somebody named Stan. There is this kind of like, okay, there's a certain amount of unseen order to things that I can't, access, but all I can do is take care of the quantity. So like, just keep creating, never stop creating. And then this like kind of creator, this guy Stan or whatever, will take care of the quality, or like the what is successful kind of thing. But yeah, it's just kind of like, it's very cheesy and it's very corny, but I feel like a lot of like artists kind of distill down to this one thing of like, I just got to keep creating even if I'm unsure about it, and it will eventually morph into something that I am proud of and that others are, catch on to. That's kind of the philosophy.
Wonderful, wonderful. So guys, last question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Where can my audience find you guys on social media, and where can you find your music?
Well, okay. Well, so you want our handles then? Okay, so Instagram is We Are the Dream Eaters. Everything else, I'm pretty sure every last other thing is The Dream Eaters.
Yeah, but I think
YouTube,
thedreameaters.com goes to our link tree to absolutely everything.
Right, the link tree is the best thing to look at. Yeah, if you really want to see, if you want access to all of those questions that you just asked, are answered by the link tree. So go into the Instagram or TikTok profile and just click on our link tree. Or actually, if you just go into a browser and put in thedreameaters.com, the Dream Eaters, all in a row, obviously, .com, our link tree, it'll redirect to our link tree, and it'll have everything that you could possibly ever want to see about us and more.
Awesome. And guys, have you visited the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast? Visit our channels on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Spreaker, and iHeart. It's Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JCOBELYACHAR. Now, are you on social media? I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and YouTube. Jacob Elyachar, JACOBELYACHAR. And guys, want to find out what's going on with AGT, who won the latest season of Masked Singer? And my take on the Dream Eaters music, visit jake-shake.com, the blog that started all, jake-shake.com. Elizabeth and Jake, I'm so grateful that you were able to come on.
Thank you so much,
Jacob.
You're so welcome.
Nice to meet you. You're a very nice young man.
Thank you very much. I love hearing that. And guys, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a great everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.